Hello. I hope the sound quality is okay on this because in some of my latest videos, the sound quality hasn't been great. This is a video I've wanted to make for a few days now, and the context is a row that's been brewing over so-called sexism. Um, I'll just say outright, I don't think this is sexism, so I'm biased. I am biased on this subject, but I still want to talk about it and reflect on some of the issues because I think it's very important. Um, it's been quite well promoted, widely promoted by the press. For right or wrong, it's become quite a high-profile case. Basically, it comes down to a 27-year-old barrister, Charlotte Proudman, who has been involved in a public spat with a colleague, 57-year-old Alexander Silk Carter, I believe is his fellow lawyer. Um, and this basically came from the fact that she had a photograph on LinkedIn, the website LinkedIn, she says for business purposes, and he commented on that and said, I know it's not politically correct, but that is one stunning photograph. Um, at first I thought, well, okay, maybe his comment was inappropriate. But then I saw her response, and basically she decided to publicly humiliate him by a very, very loaded rant on her Twitter account in response to him. She said he was misogynistic, sexist, he was objectifying women, and it basically went on like this. Now, Mrs. Proudman describes herself as, I should say Miss Proudman describes herself as a passionate feminist, and yeah, I'm going to read out the exact message here, I've just found it again. Alex, I find your message offensive. I'm on LinkedIn for business purposes, not to be approached about my physical appearance or to be objectified by sexist men. The eroticization of women's physical appearance is a way of exercising power over women. It silences women's professional attributes as their physical appearance becomes a subject. Unacceptable and misogynistic behavior. Think twice before sending another woman half your age such a sexist message. Charlotte. Um, and basically, his original message was Charlotte, delighted to connect. I appreciate that this is probably horrendously politically incorrect, but that is a stunning picture. Um, what I would say is this guy made the biggest mistake any man can make regarding a feminist, and that's compliment her. I'll read out what he wrote again, just so you know the context, just in case anyone's in any doubt. Charlotte, delighted to connect. I appreciate that this is probably horrendously politically incorrect, but that is a stunning picture. So, if you are a fair-minded person, I think you will recognize that what he wrote, whilst perhaps inappropriate, was in no way gratuitously sexual. You know, he wasn't asking her to strip, he wasn't harassing her, he wasn't even asking her on a date, nothing like that. He was simply complimenting her. And from what I've found out about this woman, she comes across as a thoroughly unpleasant individual. Um, you know, if it was a case that she did feel it was inappropriate, okay, fair enough. No one's saying that she has to like the compliment. But in that case, if she felt it was inappropriate, you know, because it's for business purposes, she could have sent him a private message and said something along the lines of, "Thank you, but I use this site for business purposes and I don't think your comment was quite appropriate. But thanks anyway." Something like that. Now, thankfully, the majority of women have enough common sense and are level-headed enough to recognize the difference between a compliment and outright sexism. Um, and what I deeply resent um, about modern feminist movement, and this case really exemplifies it. Um, and incidentally, I'm not branding her; she's calling herself a feminist, so you know she's branding herself with that title. Is how this movement abuses words, how it throws words like misogynistic and sexist around. I'll come to that in a minute, but a bit more about Charlotte Proudman, ironically named. Um, I don't want to talk about you know, personality, but I do think it's significant to this row. Apparently, she has quite a bad track record with her own family whom she's estranged from. Now, of course, that's private business, but this woman chose to make herself a public figure. She blatantly craves attention, and apparently she sent her dying grandmother a vitriolic message. um, Basically, she comes across to me as a stuck-up, unpleasant, obnoxious individual. But supposedly she's a lawyer specializing in women's rights, female genital mutilation, which she's doing a study on at Cambridge University. And I think everyone would agree that's a major human rights issue. Great. Um, but I think it is very telling that someone who is focusing on human rights would choose to make such an issue over something that is, I think any level-headed person would see, has been massively blown out of proportion. Of course, there are fellow feminists defending her in The Guardian and The Independent, predictably, and trying to basically turn her into a victim. She's no victim. She is no victim. The way I see it, she's an egomaniac who's trying to destroy a man's career. Um, I'm not saying he's entirely innocent. Maybe his comment was inappropriate, especially in light of the fact she's much younger, and also in light of the fact that, as she said, she uses it for business purposes. So maybe he shouldn't have sent the message. Okay, I understand that. But all the responses I've seen so far, 90% of them, I should say, have been critical of her attitude. And that isn't just male responses. The overwhelming majority of women that I've come across have said if a man compliments them, they take it just as that, a compliment. Now let's break down those words, misogynistic and sexist, because I think it's very, very important. Um, because the likes of Charlotte Proudman love to throw those words around and slander people with those words. And let's just be clear, those are the sort of words that could destroy someone's career. It's just like being branded a racist or a homophobe. They're very loaded words. Misogynistic is defined as a hatred of women and girls. Now, I don't understand what sort of distorted thinking can rationalize that paying a woman a compliment translates as hating her. Point one. Point two, sexism is defined as discriminating against someone on their gender. If he'd come up with a comment like, oh, you can't be a lawyer because you're a woman and you have lower intelligence, that would be outright sexist. If he said something like, listen to a man, or, anything like that, yeah, that would be sexist. Paying a compliment is not sexist. And as for this thing about objectification, I think I made another video about that. The way the feminist movement has absolutely used that word as their biggest cannon in recent years is pathetic. Um, again, maybe his comment was inappropriate, but it was not excessive. It was not overtly sexual, you know? He was not objectifying her. He was simply paying a compliment to a person whom he believed was an attractive young woman. Unfortunately, he made the mistake of sending this to someone who's a militant, aggressive, um, obviously misandric feminist. Um, And frankly, I've no sympathy for this backlash that's going against her. That is one good thing about this. She no doubt had this idea in her head that she would destroy him, but she was doing it publicly. She wanted to humiliate him. He sent a private message. She wanted to humiliate him publicly. Well, it's backfired because the majority of people observing this case um, have absolutely said that she's overreacted, both women and men. Now, just to be clear, I'm not saying that she had to, just be all flattered. If she thought it was inappropriate, she could have said that. Fair enough. But what I take issue with is the way she has tried to utterly destroy this man for no other reason than passing a compliment. I think that's shameful. But actually, it comes into another issue here, and it is this. Um, as a species, human beings have evolved over hundreds and thousands of years to interact with, I was going to say the opposite sex, but I'm going to say those who they're attracted to, so I'm not accused of being homophobic. And basically, this is an entirely natural thing. Now, if the world works the way feminists want it to, i.e., men never ever pay women compliments, how on earth are relationships supposed to be set up? The fact of the matter is, physical appearance And I think people who deny this are being dishonest. For the majority of people, physical appearance is a factor. And I think it's outright disingenuous to say that it's not. The majority of people think about that. They do. And to say that they don't, I think is just outright disingenuous. Granted, there may be some people that really genuinely don't care about that, but I think the majority of people do. Um, so, I don't know what this guy's intentions was. Maybe he was looking to take it further, and that would arguably be inappropriate because he's 30 years younger, although they're both adults. That's a very important point to stress. Um, I don't know if he's married, and of course that would maybe arguably be inappropriate. So, I'm not completely defending him and saying he was entirely in the right. I'm not saying that. However, I do believe her approach was massively disproportionate. Um, anyway, back to the point about paying compliments. We're at a stage now whereby, and I saw that Helen Mirren has made a rather nauseating claim today that men who put their arms around a girlfriend are exercising control. That's typical of feminist thinking. Um, basically, we are getting to a state where men cannot do anything. They cannot do anything without feminists claiming it's about control or it's about sexism. This is just nauseating because I don't know what feminists want exactly. They resent being called man haters, but they leave people with little other option but to consider that because they give the impression that if a man shows that he likes a woman by being a gentleman towards her, then it's condescending. He's a man who wants to control women. If he's cold and he does none of those things, then, well, he's a bastard. He doesn't care. So both feminists and women in general need to decide what exactly they want. You can't have it both ways. Um, and I know the majority of women do not think like feminists, but in Western countries where feminism does have a lot of influence, this is unfortunately reverberating across the board. And the very fact that a large proportion of the media automatically gives such a big platform to aggressive feminists really says a lot. Um, but let's just be clear about something. This woman is no victim. And, frankly, it's a disgrace in a world where there are women suffering massive human rights abuses, where they're sold into slavery by the likes of ISIS, where they're treated as commodities, where they have acid thrown in their face, where they're used as weapons of war in the likes of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Those are real human rights issues. And these arrogant, stuck up, spoiled Western feminists need to get a grip, basically, and understand what real victimhood is. I think by focusing on issues like this, they're actually trivializing the whole concept of sexism and misogyny, which are problems that do exist. I'm not saying that they don't. So yeah, that's my 5 cents on this case. So just to conclude, maybe his comment was inappropriate. Maybe he shouldn't have sent it. But I still believe, and I think looking at comments online, I think the vast majority of people believe that she took this massively out of proportion. Now she's in the public eye. Any man with any self-respect would stay the hell away from this woman, because she's clearly driven by power. She's clearly driven by a desire to um, basically humiliate men and try to tear men down for no other reason than complimenting her. She says that this was for business purposes, but it's quite a glamorous shot, you know. I'm not saying it's overtly, she's not like making any suggestive tones, but nor is she a plain Jane. It's quite clear that with that photograph, she's trying to be at least classy and glamorous. That is quite blatantly obvious from anyone that can see the picture. And there's nothing wrong with that. This has nothing to do with shaming a woman, but it is to do with aggressive feminists trying to shame men for no other reason than being men. And I think we have come to a point where young men, in fact, men in general, are not going to know what to do because they're going to think that every single thing they say will be interpreted as sexist. And I think that's very sad because what it's going to do is create a generation of lonely women who don't get men because men don't want to have to deal with this crap. And the truth is, the majority of women don't think like her. But like I say, feminists have quite a lot of influence, and they're very loud. Um, so I think she's a disgrace. I think that for her to try and destroy a man's career over paying a compliment is, she could have handled that. And even other feminists have said she could have sent him a private message. Alice Jones in The Independent said that. So I'll leave it there. Let me know your thoughts if you're in the UK or if you're anywhere else. Maybe you can quote a similar case. I just think that it's very unfortunate that we'll get into a point where feminists are so pedantic and so overly sensitive and so petty that they trivialize what are actually very serious issues. Genuine sexism, genuine misogyny. Um, I hate the way they abuse these words and throw them around to the point where they're beyond all meaning. Basically, to feminists, every form of male communication, unless of course it's groveling in agreement with feminists, is sexist. These people are driven by power and by a desire to, they have this obsession about men supposedly controlling women. But I think we've seen by this case that the real issue here is aggressive feminists trying to control everyone else. And I think the wider public is sick of them. So, Charlotte Proudman probably thought she'd be getting public favour from this. I'm pleased to see on this occasion it's backfired. I've no sympathy for her, none whatsoever, because she has chosen to put this into the public domain. She tried to destroy a man, um, and I've no sympathy with her. And frankly, if you cannot take a compliment the way it is intended, then there's something seriously wrong with you. As a man, if a woman compliments me for being good looking, if I'm not attracted to that woman, I'm not going to be nasty. I'm not going to say, oh, don't say that to me. I'm going to say thank you, and I'd feel happy. And I think the majority of women would appreciate a compliment. Incidentally, I've paid compliments to friends in a similar way. And I'm pleased to say the majority of my friends, in fact, all of my friends, because I wouldn't be friends with a militant feminist, but all of my friends have had the common sense, the decency, and the maturity to take it as it is and thank me. So, she's a bit of a disgrace, this woman. Um, let me know your thoughts.